The chicken that lived for 18 months without a head. 70 years ago, a farmer beheaded a chicken in Colorado, and it refused to die. Mike, as the bird became known, survived for 18 months and became famous. But how did he live without a head for so long, asks Chris Stokel-Walker. On the 10th of September 1945, Lloyd Olson and his wife Clara were killing chickens, on their farm in Fruita, Colorado. Olson would decapitate the birds, his wife would clean them up. But one of the 40 or 50 animals that went under Olson's hatchet that day didn't behave like the rest. They got down to the end and had one who was still alive, up and walking around, says the couple's great-grandson, Troy Waters, himself a farmer in Fruita. The chicken kicked and ran, and didn't stop. It was placed in an old apple box on the farm's screened porch for the night, and when Lloyd Olson woke the following morning, he stepped outside to see what had happened. The damn thing was still alive, says Waters. It's part of our weird family history, says Krista Waters, his wife. Waters heard the story as a boy, when his bedridden great-grandfather came to live in his parents' house. The two had adjacent bedrooms, and the old man, often sleepless, would talk for hours. He took the chicken carcasses to town to sell them at the meat market, Waters says. He took this rooster with him, and back then he was still using the horse and wagon quite a bit. He threw it in the wagon, took the chicken in with him and started betting people beer or something that he had a live headless chicken. Word spread around Fruita about the miraculous headless bird. The local paper dispatched a reporter to interview Olson, and 2 weeks later a sideshow promoter called Hope Wade traveled nearly 300 miles from Salt Lake City, Utah. He had a simple proposition: take the chicken onto the sideshow circuit, they could make some money. Back then in the 1940s, they had a small farm and were struggling, Waters says. Lloyd said, "What the hell, we might as well." First they visited Salt Lake City and the University of Utah, where the chicken was put through a battery of tests. Rumor has it that university scientists surgically removed the heads of many other chickens to see whether any would live. It was here that Life magazine came to marvel over the story of Miracle Mike the Headless Chicken, as he had by now been branded by Hope Wade. Then Lloyd, Clara and Mike set off on a tour of the U.S. They went to California and Arizona, and Hope Wade took Mike on a tour of the southeastern United States when the Olsons had to return to their farm to collect the harvest. The birds' travels were carefully documented by Clara in a scrapbook that is preserved in the Waters' gun safe today. People around the country wrote letters, 40 or 50 in all, and not all positive. One compared the Olsons to Nazis, another from Alaska asked them to swap Mike's drumstick in exchange for a wooden leg. Some were addressed only to the owners of the headless chicken in Colorado, yet still found their way to the family farm. After the initial tour, the Olsons took Mike the headless chicken to Phoenix, Arizona, where disaster struck in the spring of 1947. Mike was fed with liquid food and water that the Olsons dropped directly into his esophagus. Another vital bodily function they helped with was clearing mucus from his throat. They fed him with a dropper, and cleared his throat with a syringe. The night Mike died, they were woken in their motel room by the sound of the bird choking. When they looked for the syringe they realized they had left it at the sideshow, and before they could find an alternative, Mike suffocated. For years he would claim he had sold the chicken to a guy in the sideshow circuit, Waters says, before pausing. It wasn't until, well, a few years before he died that he finally admitted to me one night that it died on him. I think he didn't ever want to admit he screwed up and let the proverbial goose that lays golden eggs die on him. Olson would never tell what he did with the dead bird. I'm willing to bet he got flipped out in the desert somewhere between here and Phoenix, on the side of the road, probably eaten by coyotes, Waters says. But by any measure Mike, bred as a fryer chicken, had a good innings. How had he been able to survive for so long? The thing that surprises Dr. Tom Smulders, a chicken expert at the Center for Behavior and Evolution at Newcastle University, is that he did not bleed to death. The fact that he was able to continue functioning without a head he finds easier to explain. For a human to lose his or her head would involve an almost total loss of the brain. For a chicken, it's rather different. You'd be amazed how little brain there is in the front of the head of a chicken, says Smulders. It is mostly concentrated at the back of the skull, behind the eyes, he explains. Reports indicate that Mike's beak, face, eyes and an ear were removed with the hatchet blow. But Smulders estimates that up to 80% of his brain by mass, and almost everything that controls the chicken's body, including heart rate, breathing, hunger and digestion, remained untouched. It was suggested at the time that Mike survived the blow because part or all of the brain stem remained attached to his body. Since then science has evolved, and what was then called the brain stem has been found to be part of the brain proper. Most of the bird brain as we know it now would actually be considered the brain stem back then, Smulders says. The names that had been given to parts of the bird brain in the late 1800s were all indicating equivalences with the mammalian brain that were in fact wrong. Why those who tried to create a Mike of their own did not succeed is hard to explain. It seems the cut, in Mike's case, came in just the right place, and a timely blood clot luckily prevented him bleeding to death. Troy Waters suspects that his great-grandfather tried to replicate his success with the hatchet a few times. Certainly, others did. A neighbor who lived up the road would buy up any chickens for sale at an auction in nearby Grand Junction, Colorado, and stop by the family farm with a six-pack of beer for Olson, to persuade him to explain exactly how he did it. I remember him telling me, laughing, that he got free beer every other weekend because the neighbor was sure he got filthy rich off this chicken, Waters says. Filthy rich was an opinion many held in Fruta of the Olson family. But according to Waters, that was an exaggeration. He did make a little money off it, Waters says. He bought a hay baler and 2 tractors, replacing his horse and mule. And also, a bit of a luxury, a 1946 Chevrolet pickup truck. Waters once asked Lloyd Olson if he had fun. He said, "Oh yeah, I had a chance to travel around and see parts of the country I probably otherwise wouldn't have seen. I was able to modernize and have farm equipment." But it was something he put in his past. He still farmed the rest of his life, scratched a living out of the dirt. Thank you so much for watching my videos, like, comment and subscribe, smiley face. Have a nice day with a smile, smiley face.